Okay, hello again, everybody. Today we have something very special that is a first for the channel. We have another native English speaker. However, our guest Amanda does not speak English like I speak English. She speaks Australian English. So, Amanda, thanks for joining us. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for inviting me here on the channel, Kyle. Hi, everyone. Yes, again, my name is Amanda. I'm from Australia, but for the last almost 5 years, I've been living in India. So I moved here in June 2019 to get married. My husband is Indian, and I've been here ever since. During my time here in India, I discovered a bit of a passion, what is now my passion, which is teaching Australian English. So I've been an online ESL teacher for about 3.5 years, but I've been focusing mostly on Aussie English for a bit over a year now. So that is sort of my little baby is my Australian English page, my Australian English content, whatever you want to call it.
Very cool. And of course, we will put all of Amanda's stuff, Instagram, YouTube, etc. in the comments. Guys, go check her out below. She has some really cool content. So I checked out your Instagram and I think it's really cool with your Aussie slang and stuff. Can you tell us kind of what you focus on with your YouTube and Instagram, what you like to share?
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started my page, my Instagram, Aussie English with Amanda, I was kind of doing accent and slang, but I've kind of moved away from the slang part a little bit. I still post like slang posts and things, but my main focus now is more on accent and pronunciation. So I get a lot of students come to me wanting to improve their English pronunciation to sound more Aussie because they're living in Australia or they want to understand Australians. So yeah, that's what my main kind of focus is on my Instagram. YouTube is only pretty new for me. I was kind of doing pronunciation tips and accent tips and things like that too, but I recently started my own podcast, which is I'm posting the videos through YouTube. So that's really what YouTube's doing for me right now is hosting the video side of the podcast. But I do plan on doing more videos, but I just don't have enough time. I have all these plans going on in my head on what I want to do, and I just don't have enough time.
Yeah, that's kind of the dilemma of hustlers, right? Us who are trying to get all these goals accomplished. And, I have a full-time job, I'm a father, and I make tons of content. So I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes. I mean, I don't have children, but I've got 3 dogs. So not exactly the same, but they're still pretty time consuming. On top of, like teaching's my full-time job. So I teach, I create my content. I'm working on an online self-paced course. Plus, I have a home to look after. I'm still a wife. So many responsibilities. Yeah, it's a lot.
Definitely. Okay, so do you enjoy teaching English as a second language? Is that fun for you, or is it just a job? Tell me.
Good question. So originally when I started, it was just a job. It was more of a hobby actually, because I needed something to do here in India. I wasn't allowed to work for a certain amount of time. And then when opportunities became available to work, I looked for work. And I started teaching on a platform called Cambly, which was marketed as like a conversational platform. So I was like, oh, this is great. I'm just going to get on and talk to people. It was also during the pandemic, and I really missed social interaction. I missed communicating with people, and it was just the perfect opportunity to start this kind of online work. So it did start off as just like a kind of a hobby or a job. But over the last, I want to say probably 1.5 years, it's turned into a passion for me. I just started my own website a couple of weeks ago now. I started my own website. I've released a slang ebook. I've got a couple of other like downloadable resources on there. Like I said, I'm working on my self-paced course, but yeah, I really do love it. It is just tiring though sometimes because it's not just the classes. It's the preparation, it's the lesson planning, it's the, if I have to correct homework, there's the creation of the content. So it's not just going to work, doing my job and then going home, or like logging on, logging off.
Mm.
My brain is always on.
Yeah. Yeah. Tons of people have asked me, hey, can you teach me? Can we do classes? And that's the one reason why I'm like, I would love to, but I can't right now because I know how much goes into teaching. So much. It's not just an hour
Mm,
class, it's lesson plans,
yes.
it's a ton. Okay.
Hmm.
So, what part of Australia are you from?
It's also not an easy question to answer, but I will do a bit of a breakdown. I was born in Sydney. When I was 8, I moved to a very, very, very small town on the beach. At that time, there was just 5,000 people. It's called Woolgoolga.
Okay.
And
Is that Aboriginal or
almost, actually. So it did get, I think, colonized, the name. The original
mhm,
name is Wigulga. So it's very
mhm.
close to the indigenous name. Yeah. Um, so that's where I grew up. That's where I did my higher education. When I was 20, I moved to the middle of Australia to a place called Uluru Ayers Rock Resort. So you might know it as the big red rock at the center of Australia. So I worked
Mhm.
out there for a year. I did hospitality. So my higher education was in hospitality management. And my first hotel job was at Ayers Rock Resort. So I was there. Then I moved to Darwin for 2 years in the Northern Territory. Ayers Rock's also in the Northern Territory, but I moved to the top end of the Northern Territory. After that, I moved to Brisbane, and I was there for 6 years before moving to India. So when people ask where I'm from, Brisbane, because my mum and brother are still there, and my dad lives in my hometown. So that's usually where I spend my time.
Okay, interesting. So all over Australia.
Literally, yeah. It's not an easy question, but I think that's like a lot of Australians is that, and that's why accents aren't really regional in a way, because people
Hmm,
move around a lot. So unlike, maybe for example, here in India, well, that's not a very good example because my in-laws moved from their home village, but most people, like, they live in generational homes like that. How those houses stay in their
mhm.
family for generations, and people don't really move away too much. But yeah, in Australia, it's very common just to move away for work when you're 18, move away for university, things like that.
Okay. And so obviously I'm a native English speaker, but this is my first conversation with an Aussie, so it's a pleasure for me. What
Okay, if
would
I
you?
speak too fast, let me know because I
No,
talk
no,
really
no,
fast
it's
when I'm
fine.
excited.
Oh yeah, me too. I love doing this and it's super cool. Usually I do these interviews with my subscribers who are Spanish speakers learning English. So I slow
Oh,
it
yeah.
down so that they can understand me. You know the way to speak to somebody
Yeah.
who's working on their English. But
Hmm.
me as somebody from the United States who has never spoken to an Australian, what would you like me to know about your country?
Um, well, there is definitely a lot of animals. So if you see like this kind of, I always forget this word, not misconception, but this assumption, sorry, that Australia has a lot of wild animals. It does. That's a true assumption. But we don't ride kangaroos. So I know that there's this kind of like assumption that we ride kangaroos to school and stuff. We do not.
Man, I was hoping
um,
you did.
yeah. It's a beautiful country, but it's very big. People don't realize how big the country is. Um, it can take you like literally 24 hours driving straight to go from Ayers Rock, where I used to live, at one end of the Northern Territory to the top end. So on the map, it doesn't look like it's that much, but it will take you 24 hours driving. It's a huge country. So yeah, especially when Europeans travel to Australia, they think you can just travel so easily because in Europe you can cross 3 different countries in a day.
Yeah.
But no, Australia's a big country, but it offers so much. You've got the coastal areas full of like beautiful beaches. You've got rainforests. The northern areas have the Great Barrier Reef. Queensland, and yeah, in Queensland, you've got the desert in the middle of Australia, and everything just brings something beautiful.
Okay. Two-part question, okay?
Sure.
Um, are kangaroos common? Do you see them everywhere, or is that kind of a misconception? And
Hmm.
second, you made it sound so beautiful. Would they be nice to me if I come and visit? Are they welcoming to foreigners?
Okay, so first question. I actually just talked about this with a student today because she was asking if kangaroos are common. She's in Australia, she just hasn't seen one yet. You're not going to see them hopping through a city. But where I grew up in my small beach town, you can see them everywhere. And they've grown up around people, so they're not really that scared of them. They will still hop away if you get too close, but they're not too scared. But yeah, in some regional areas, you can definitely see them. One video went viral, and I realized afterwards it was my hometown. And I can't remember if people were playing cricket or football, but like 20 kangaroos interrupted the game. And I was watching this video. I think someone sent it to me. I was like, oh my God, that's my hometown.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, you can see them in the wild like that. Koalas, though, I haven't seen a wild koala, but my student has seen one when she was camping. She saw a koala in a tree. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, those are cute, but I heard they're dangerous actually.
Okay, another misconception is we have drop bears. We don't. They're not bears that fall out of the tree. Koalas can be a little bit. They've got sharp claws and sharp teeth. You can hold them at like wildlife sanctuaries and wildlife parks and things. But yeah, they've got like a park ranger or a worker there managing it. So yes. Second question. That's a bit of a tough one. Yes, they are welcoming as long as they see that you are trying to fit in with the culture. I'm going to say what I think is maybe an assumption. It could be a misconception about Americans, but from what we see on social media is that Americans think that there's really nothing outside of America. So like if Americans go to other countries, they expect people to kind of be accommodating to them. Or they'll want people to speak their kind of English or serve their kind of foods. And I've experienced something like that before when I was working in the middle of the desert and a group of Americans came in and wanted to know where the closest McDonald's was. There is none. It's 300 kilometers away. Sorry, love. So yeah. I think a lot of people in Australia have that kind of image of Americans. And if an American was to go to Australia and have something like they give that kind of impression, they might be a bit rude. But mostly to all foreigners, they're actually really welcoming as long as they can see that you're making an effort to speak the language and fit in.
Right. Okay. So that's kind of a misconception that I fight to prove wrong. And I can't say for the rest of my
I like it.
But yeah, I speak Spanish and I learned French and I've dabbled in other languages, so I try my best to experience other cultures. And if I'm visiting somebody else, I want to respect their land, their culture, their rules, and I think that we should all try to do that. If we're in somebody else's house, be respectful of their rules. Right?
Definitely, yeah. And you know what? I think people who never leave their home country, Australians are the same. You get some Australians that have probably never left the country, and it's those are the ones that are probably going to be rude to you. They haven't experienced other cultures. Whereas, I live in a different country. I'm learning another language. I've traveled before. You're the same. You have the respect for other countries because you've traveled, you've seen it, right? So I think that's also a big difference is a lot of people who do tend to have those kind of, let's call them racist views because that's what they are. They're usually the ones that haven't left.
Right. Or haven't dealt with, if you haven't been involved with the people to see that they're just people and we all have the same issues. I mean, if somebody speaking a different language can be shocking and weird, but if you understood, you'd realize they're talking about their brother. They're talking about their job, human things.
Exactly. So, yeah, very true.
Okay, so you are in India right now. Where in India are you, and what is it like?
So I live in the northern part of India. My city is called Chandigarh. It is the capital city of 3 states. So I live in what's called a tri-city area. And my city was built to be the capital city of the 3 different areas. So it's a planned city. The architect who designed my city also designed Adelaide and Canberra in Australia. So there's a lot of similarities between all of these cities. I enjoy it. It's just really hard sometimes. It is. It's hard living in another country and living in another culture and learning another language. Some days it's really, really hard, but it's a nice city. It's clean, it's green-ish, not as green as Australia, but it's it's got everything that I need besides a beach. So I can do everything that I did in Australia here. I go to the gym, I go to get my nails done, I go to the mall to meet my friends, I go to the local coffee shop. All of these really small things I took for granted in Australia. Here, they're easily accessible. I do them quite frequently, and having them readily available has really helped with my transition to live here. But yeah, some days it's really hard. Some days I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't have to think so hard in Hindi. I wish people could speak English. I wish people understood me. But, it's home for me now. So, yeah.
Okay. So my understanding was that India was a very bilingual country with a heavy English influence. Is that not the case where you're at?
No, not really, actually. So in the direct city itself, like I can go to the shopping mall and people will speak English, which is frustrating because I'm trying to learn my Hindi. So I speak Hindi back. But I live on the outskirts in like a small kind of suburb, let's say, and not everyone really speaks English. My husband's parents don't speak English. They're just come from a really simple village. They never learnt English. So I really had to learn the language just to kind of fit in. But big cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, especially Bangalore, it's known as the Silicon Valley of India. You're going to get English as a common language because there are like 22 nationally recognized languages here in India. And especially in the South, they're not related. Like if we were to travel from North India to South India, we wouldn't be able to communicate unless we both know English because the Indian languages are not similar at all. Whereas in the North, they're kind of like relatives, let's say. I live in a state called Punjab. The regional language is Punjabi. I can understand it. There's a few differences between Punjabi and Hindi, but it's close enough that I can understand what people are talking about. So, yeah, when you go to South India, there's just no similarities. So people have to speak English in a business environment. So yeah, in those cases, English, there is a heavy influence, but in my area, not so much.
Okay. Now I've heard that there are some parts of India that are heavily Muslim. I imagine that in an area like that, it would be a huge culture shock. Has there been a lot of culture shocks where you're at? I think the people there are mostly Hindu, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Hindu is a majority religion anyway. Like I think 85 or 80% of the country are Hindu. But where I live in Punjab, the majority religion is Sikhism. So Sikh Indians. Yeah. So even though they are a minority religion of the country, they're the majority religion of the state. So I didn't have too much culture shock because my hometown in Australia is known as Mini Punjab.
Really?
Yeah, so it's where Punjabi Indians first settled in Australia. My hometown is home to the very first Sikh temple of Australia. So I grew up with Indian friends. I wasn't very active in the culture, but I grew up knowing about it. My husband's Hindu, so that was a completely different religion for me to kind of learn about and get into. But culture shocks, I think there were some things that happened very suddenly and some things that were very gradual. So when I arrived, definitely the pollution was pretty confronting. People don't really have time schedules here. People are never on time. And that's something that really started to bother me after a long time because I am so organized. Like I am organized with everything. And people here will say, oh, I'll just be 5 minutes, and they could be an hour. There is no punctuality, there is no time management, and it's been nearly 5 years I've been living here, and it still bothers me sometimes.
I can imagine. My wife is Colombian, and for a lot of Latinos, 15 minutes late is just on time, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
an hour, I can't imagine an hour. With my culture, I would feel so disrespected if you show up an hour late to a lunch meeting with me or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. So it is a culture shock because, um, from a Western perspective, it looks like that you don't respect the other person and their time. And so that's
Mhm.
something that I've, had to kind of, I don't have a lot of Indian students, but on social media, definitely I have a lot of Indian followers. And it's something I have talked about that you have to be really careful when you go to Australia because for example, if you start work at 9 o'clock, you're expected to be there at 8:50, not 9 o'clock walking in the door,
Mhm.
And I did a podcast feature for an Indian guy living in Australia, and that's something that I said when he was saying any advice for people. And I was talking about the time management because it's something that was a huge shock for me on the opposite end.
Definitely. Okay. Okay, so I want to talk about maybe some some conceptions that we have about India as Westerners,
Okay.
and you can tell me if they're true in your experience or not, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
So I recently read a book about yoga and it touched on Hinduism and a lot
hmm
of things like that. Is everybody like hitting a lotus posture and mudras in the streets or what?
Look, not in my area, not really, but definitely if you go to some areas like Vrindavan, Rishikesh, Goa, a lot of those, let's call them hippie places, where there's a lot of yoga sanctuaries and yoga schools. People come here to do their yoga certification and things like that. So yeah, there is, but I don't think it's not as much as like is portrayed in the West. Definitely not. Like I feel like I'm a bad visitor to India or guest of India because I don't do yoga. I've tried. We just don't get along.
hmm Does your husband practice?
No, no, we're both into the gym. So we're more gym goers rather than yoga doers. But I know a lot of people here, like a lot of foreigners who have gotten into yoga and a lot of other Indians who have gotten into it. But we personally don't dabble in yoga.
Okay. So it's like from reading and watching videos you would think like yoga, chakras, mysticism, but maybe more in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah. And I think, look, India is definitely a spiritual country, but I think how people view their spirituality is like very different for different people. So whether it's like religious spirituality or whether it is like, it could be the Hinduism side, Buddhism, whether it's Sikhism, Islam, Christianity. So I think everyone's kind of has their own ways of like being spiritual.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think in the West, it's kind of portrayed that, yeah, everyone's spiritual and yoga and saying namaste. Well, people do say namaste. That's how you say hello. But yeah, not everyone is like saying namaste and practicing yoga.
I was actually surprised when I read this book and it explained Hinduism. It has a lot of similarities with Christianity. When you take away the idols between the two, you've got like Christ and the apostles over here and prophets, and then you've got just the gods over here. But the fundamentals is the same of treating everybody and loving, and there's so
Mm,
many similarities between religions when you stop being scared of other religions.
exactly. When you go down to the fundamentals and the basics, they all have the same core values. Basically,
hmm
love and respect one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. So the next thing that I hope is not true, but maybe it is. So
Okay.
on TikTok or Instagram Reels, I've seen videos of Indian street food, and it's a guy just sitting on the ground. He's not even wearing shoes. He's touching
hmm
everything with his hands, and it looks filthy. Now, I'm not going to judge anybody, but is this a very common thing? Like maybe the cleanliness standards of food is not like it would be here or in Australia.
Yeah, and I think cleanliness standards in general is just very different. Like I'm in a couple of expat in India Facebook groups, and so many times I've seen comments from people saying, "Where can I find like house help that cleans to Western standards. It's just because we have different views of what, yeah, I know, it could have been worded a bit differently, but I think we just have different views of what we perceive as clean and tidy. Like, it's not wrong, it's just different. The way that I clean my bathroom, the way my husband would clean the bathroom, or, his sister would clean the bathroom, is very different. So I clean my bathroom because I like it cleaned a certain way. So when we swing back to street food, yeah, look, people are like that. Cleanliness levels, I've gotten sick once living here, and that's only because it was in the summer season, and there's a lot of power cuts where I live. A lot of, like, when the electricity goes out, you don't know how food's being kept in storage, and I ended up getting sick, and the doctor was like, don't eat outside food in the summer because you don't know, like, if the food has been out for too long out of refrigeration. But when we eat street food outside, we go to the same places, and my husband has been living here his whole life. He knows the places, he knows the clean places. But yes, the videos that you see, that happens. I have my Life in India Instagram, and I posted a reel because I went to a wedding last week, and I posted a reel when I was eating famous Indian street food, but it was at the wedding. And it's gone viral just randomly. And someone commented saying, did it have the extra ingredient? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't cook it. I didn't understand. And he's like, next time you eat on the street, like, ask for the secret ingredient. And I was like, all right. And then someone else commented and said, don't, he's teasing you. They're talking about the uncleanliness of street vendors, and the secret ingredient is the, let's say, germs. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, look, it does happen. I'm not going to just sugarcoat it and say it doesn't, but not every place is like that. It's obviously those ones that get viral for a reason, because people are talking about it. But I've been here, like I keep saying, almost 5 years. I eat outside food regularly, and I've been sick once, and that was just after being here 2.5 years.
Okay. So
you just have to, like, look at the vendors, like the ones we go to wear gloves. So just make sure they're using they're doing cleanliness. They're using cleanliness. Sorry.
Okay. So
sorry, I can't talk. It's the end of my workday.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I understand. Okay. So if you use a little bit of common sense, you could find some decent food to eat.
Exactly. It's common sense. Yeah.
Okay. So you've learned Hindi. Do you speak any other languages?
I'm still learning Hindi. It's a work in progress. I think I'm probably at, like, intermediate level. No, not really. I would love to learn Italian one day, because my mum's actually Italian. She was born in Australia to immigrant parents. So I have this kind of pull to learn Italian, because I feel like it's part of my identity. I'm 50% Italian, right? So I know how to count to 10. I know how to say some bad words. I know how to ask, how are you? But it's been on my bucket list, or my to-do list, for the last 3 years, start learning Italian once I get fluent in Hindi. But I don't think I'm ever going to be fluent in Hindi. So I think I just need to take the plunge and start learning Italian.
Okay, cool. So I just wanted to get an idea of your language learning experience. Can you tell us about your journey learning Hindi, how it started, what you found difficult?
Yeah. So when I first started, I made the mistake of trying to try all of these different resources to learn. So I was trying to create a daily schedule, because I wasn't working back then, of, like, I'm going to do an hour of Duolingo, then an hour of this textbook, and then an hour on this website, and then an hour doing this. But I wasn't progressing, because I was just doing a bit of everything. And then I was getting overwhelmed and confused, because I didn't know what to do. So I ended up just kind of committing myself to one textbook, Teach Yourself Hindi. And that was really good. I used Duolingo to learn the alphabet, because they have a script alphabet. So I used Duolingo for that. Like, I can read letters. I don't always understand what it means, but I can read the letters. Then I used this textbook, and I got to a point where the grammar was starting to really confuse me because the grammar structure's different. I don't know about Spanish. I think it might be, is it subject, object, and verb at the end? Or is verb in the middle?
It's just completely reversed. So
Yeah.
like, let's say black coffee. We say black coffee, but they say café negro. They say coffee black.
Ah, okay, right. Yeah.
So it's
So,
pretty much everything, but just take and reverse it.
okay. So in Hindi, verb is at the end. So it's subject, object, verb. And that was quite confusing for me. And they have masculine and feminine objects, nouns, that sort of thing. Sometimes the verb ending will take the gender of the subject. Sometimes it takes the gender of the object. So then I'd have to know the gender of things. Like table is, I think, masculine, or I can't remember if it's masculine or feminine now. I know darvaza, the door, I think is masculine. Anyway, so I have to learn that. But the verb ending changes according to the subject. So you could have like 6 different verb endings just for one tense. So male, female, masculine, plural, mixed plural, feminine plural. So five different verb endings. And they also have polite and they have informal and formal ways of referring to people. So you have like formal you and informal you, and then really, really informal you. But you can't use the really, really informal because it's very disrespectful to use it to someone you should be saying formal you to. So I call everyone formal you, even if they're younger than me, because I just don't want to get it mixed up. So yes, anyway, I was getting really stuck learning the grammar, and my husband was no help because, well, he's not a teacher. At the time, I didn't understand that, but now I do. And I would ask him a question like, I once said to him, what's the difference between aapka and apna? And aapka means your, and apna also means your, but it's kind of like saying your own something. And he's like, aapka is your, and apna is apna. And I was like, that's not helpful. So then one of my friends, she had been studying through a language school, and before COVID, they were in person only. But because of the pandemic, they moved online. So I decided to enroll with the language school as well. And a 12-week course took me 2 years because it's supposed to be a 12-week in-person course, but I was just doing an hour a day.
Okay.
But I learned all the fundamentals of grammar. It gave me a really good foundation. So now I take classes through Preply like 2 or 3 times a week just to work on my conversational skills. So I've been learning Hindi on and off since I moved, but consistently for about 3 years.
Okay. Can you say something real quick? Just like, hello, good morning. My name is Amanda.
Yes. Namaste, Shubh mera naam Amanda hai. मैं ऑस्ट्रेलिया से हूँ और अब मैं चंडीगढ़ में रहती हूँ.
Okay, I'm impressed. See, the thing is, like, maybe you are like, oh, my Hindi sucks. But to me, as somebody who doesn't speak it, that sounds so fluent. And we don't understand that because in our own minds, we're judging ourselves. But
Yes,
other people are like,
true.
wow, this Australian lady speaks awesome Hindi.
Yeah. So I had this experience. I went traveling last week for a friend's wedding, and I haven't traveled like within India in a very long time. Not since I've been learning Hindi anyway. And in my local area, people know that I can understand a bit of Hindi. It's normal for them. But when I was traveling, because it's just habit for me to speak Hindi, so many people were shocked. Oh my gosh, you know Hindi? Why are you learning? Where are you from? So I was getting all of these questions, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I am like better than I thought because I'm getting so much feedback about it. But for me, it's like, oh, it's just a normal thing now.
Right. Well, I congratulate you. To my untrained ear, your Hindi sounds excellent.
Thanks.
Okay. So I went to Chat GPT and I typed in Give me 5 words that Americans and Australians pronounce differently. So I would like to,
Oh, I love these games.
mine, I would like to say the word and then you say it. I'll say the next one and then you say it, and we'll go on like
Great.
that. Okay. Sound good?
Cool.
Okay.
Yes.
Advertisement.
We say advertisement as well. I
Okay.
say advertisement, but I will just say very quickly that because Australia, yes, we were colonized by the British, but there are some words that we say like 2 different ways of. Like, for example, the word neither, we say neither or neither. So we kind of, with some words, we say both the American and British pronunciations. Well, it's not American because we don't say neither. We don't say the R. But yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah,
Right.
I say advertisement, but some people in Australia do say advertisement.
Advertisement. Okay. Wow.
Yes.
Tomato.
Oh, tomato.
Okay. Schedule.
I also say schedule.
Okay, but I assume some people might say schedule.
They do, yeah, schedule. So my husband says schedule. I think that's the British pronunciation because that's what they learned here in India was British English. So my husband says schedule and I say schedule. But in
Oh,
Australia, you'll hear both. And that's something I
oh,
always have to remind my students is that just because I say it one way doesn't mean you're wrong. It's just that there's different ways of saying it in Australia.
okay. Lieutenant.
Lieutenant, lieutenant. Yeah, I don't say the T on the end either, lieutenant.
Okay, and aluminum.
Oh, aluminium.
Aluminium. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, we got a couple that had a very big contrast, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So on my interviews that I normally do, I ask some random questions just to give people a chance to practice their English. Obviously, you and I don't need to work on our English, but by asking you these questions, I could give my listeners some listening practice. So is it okay with you if I just
Okay.
ask you some completely random questions?
Sure, please.
Okay. What is your biggest fear?
Ooh, okay. Someone once asked me this and I answered it. Now I can't remember what I said. What is my biggest fear? Notice how I said fear, by the way, not fear. um, okay, I'm going to go a bit deep here. So, I mean, I'm very open about my mental health because I have a YouTube channel about my life in India where I talk about it. But I was diagnosed with a mental illness here in India about a year after I moved. And my biggest fear is that when I have children, that I'm not going to be able to heal properly from my mental illness and I'm going to give my kids trauma. That's
Okay.
my biggest fear. So I'm a bit dark. Sorry, everyone.
Oh no. That's deep, and I'm sorry you've dealt with that. I've actually made some videos talking about that as well. I've had some issues in the past, and more people need to be open with it because a lot of people are suffering alone in silence, feeling terrified, like something's wrong with them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I applaud you for being brave enough to admit it.
Thank you. Yes.
And
So yes, that's my
I'm
biggest fear.
positive. Oh, well, you're strong enough to say it and face it, so I'm sure you'll be strong enough to deal with that situation if and when you have children. So don't be scared.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get to a lighter note. Tell me some things you're grateful for.
Oh, I've been feeling very, very grateful recently, actually. I've had a lot of really great opportunities come up ever since I started my Instagram, Aussie English with Amanda. Like so many incredible opportunities just from teaching English online. This was not something I did in Australia. I worked in hospitality, then I left the hotel industry and I worked for an insurance company. I moved here, not allowed to work for a little while, ended up finding a job just because I was bored and needed human interaction. It turned into something I love, but I'm so grateful for the opportunities that have come from that. I have met a lot of really fantastic people online, like let's say other ESL teachers or, you know, my followers, these kinds of like interactions that I get to do. And I don't know, it's just, it feels really special to be able to like have these opportunities. And I never imagined my life in India would be like this. I didn't know what I would be doing here work-wise, but I never imagined like I'm building a business. Like never did I even imagine that. So I'm really grateful for that.
Super cool. Yeah, and it's amazing the relationships that you could build online, you know. Like even just this conversation is going to be a really awesome part of my day. So it's like you get to connect with
Yeah.
somebody who's had a completely different experience, but we also have so much in common, and that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, if you could snap your fingers and change something about yourself right now, is there something you would change?
Gonna be a bit dark again.
Uh-oh.
No, just kidding. Because I'm actively working on my anger. So if I could change anything, it would be that, but I'm working on that. If I could change anything, look, I'd probably have a little bit more patience because India has taught me patience, but some days it's really, really bloody hard. So I would try and have a bit more patience.
Okay, so I just said we have some things in common. Now I think we have more in common than I previously thought. But let me tell you, uh, what has taught me patience is my son. I'm his teacher, but he has taught me patience. So
Yeah.
it sounds like you want children one day. You will learn patience whether you like it or not.
I think so. Yes, definitely. I've definitely witnessed that. My sister's got 2 kids, and just seeing how she handles her daughters, or that's not probably the best word, handles how she, you know, works with her daughters. My sister was also someone who had very, very limited patience, especially growing up. She had no patience whatsoever. And to see her now, the patience of her, yeah, I can definitely see it's the kids.
Sometimes you have to handle those kids. Just kidding, of course. Keeping with the theme of dark, a little dark humor.
Yeah.
So, but seriously, yeah, I don't do that to my kid. Don't worry.
I didn't even think it.
Okay. What do you think is the biggest problem that we as humanity are facing in the world today?
Oh, I think it's the wars. It's wars everywhere. There's just conflict and fighting everywhere. Um, I don't think, I think that a lot of people don't have compassion. People lack compassion. I'm not, obviously not everyone, but I just see it online. I don't know if you've experienced trolls on YouTube yet or on Instagram, but you know, they're fucking nasty. And there's just no compassion. And then you see the different wars going on around the world and the comments on social media. There's no compassion for those people. There's no compassion for minorities. There's no compassion for certain groups of people. And I think that's dividing everyone. And that's a really, 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 really big problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you start to get the trolls and the mean comments, it means you're doing something right. So
I
you
know,
gotta,
yes. I
you
was
gotta accept it.
Yeah. Well, I was feeling a bit deflated yesterday because I got a comment on my viral Indian reel and someone told me to go back to my country.
No. So yeah, that's people are definitely mean, but like you said, viral. So when you're reaching that many people,
Yes.
you're gonna get that 1 or 2% of humanity that
Yeah.
is just nasty and ugly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know the good thing about Instagram, I don't know if YouTube does it because I've never had to use it, but you can hide certain words or phrases. So they won't even show up on your content. So if someone types that certain word or phrase, it's going to look like they've posted the comment and they can have a bit of a laugh about it, but no one else will
Mhm.
see it. It never comes to me. So I've had to do that on a couple of my viral reels just for my own mental peace. So the comments are hidden or I just go through and delete the bad comments.
Definitely. My wife controls my Facebook. I do all my other stuff, but she wanted to help me with something, so she does the Facebook. And we did a
Yeah.
reel that got pretty big, and it was her and I, her trying to pronounce difficult words in English, and a lot
Yeah.
of people were just mean. And one comment that was particularly mean was, it said, I'll say it in Spanish and then in English, en busca de tarjeta verde, and it was like she's just looking for the green card, insinuating that's why she's with me. And it was like,
all the bloody comments, man. I had someone say that I was looking for Indian residency. Because yes, I want to leave my country, Australia, and get citizenship of India. It's ridiculous, man. It really is. It's because people have nothing better to comment, or people don't like seeing other people happy and successful. So they just like, it's their own insecurities. And that's something I have to keep reminding myself, that it comes down to people's own insecurities. And that's where the hate comes from. That's terrible though.
But it's like, who thinks like that? Who watches two people trying to make nice content to help people and says, let me say something mean and cut these people down?
Yeah, actually, I had something similar. I did a reel with my husband and I. I actually made it a year ago when I first started my Instagram, but I've been reposting old content. And it's just like a role play where like I say bloody oath and he's like, what? And then I explain what bloody oath means. And someone, Aussie, wrote on it and told him to go back to his country because he thought we were in Australia. And I was like, bro, we live in India. Like, calm down.
Wow.
Another Indian in Australia, go back.
Well, you got to take the good with the bad. Okay,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just part of life, and we have to deal with it. If you're putting yourself in the public space, that's the chance you have to take, right?
Yes, true.
Okay. I have to wake my son up in a few minutes and get him ready for school. I have one more question for you, and it's a super random, weird one, okay?
Okay, love it.
And I really like this topic. Some people think it's weird, but I am fascinated by it. Have you ever had a paranormal experience?
Oh, not kind of, actually. Yes. So I was dating this guy for a couple of months when I lived in Australia, and he was friends with this girl who's from Turkey. And she's like a tea leaf reader and has those kind of, she can communicate with spirits. They were all at my house one night, and she started asking questions. Oh, who do you live with? I said, I live by myself. And she's like, oh, okay. And then she's like, have you ever lived with someone else? I was like, oh yeah, my ex used to live with me and his sister stayed for a bit too. And he's like, oh, and she stayed in this room, like talking about my spare room. I was like, yes. Apparently she could feel like some spirits that kind of was left behind from when they stayed with me, and when they left, the spirit never left. And then I was like, that's so crazy, because I had a couple of experiences where I kind of felt like someone was in my apartment, but I lived alone. And I was like, I wonder if that was that. And she's like, oh, it's fine. It's not like a dangerous spirit. Like, this one's friendly. You just have to burn some sage sticks and ask it to leave, and it will leave.
Okay. So did you burn some sage?
I definitely did.
Okay, very cool. Thank you for sharing that experience with me. I think that's just a super cool thing that you could dive into and talk about, because a lot of people have seen a lot of crazy things, and I tend to lean towards maybe it's people with anxiety a lot of times. You know, I've been anxious, and it seems in those moments I'm like, what's in my closet? What's under the bed?
Yeah.
What was that noise? So I tend to think maybe there's some correlation between anxiety and paranormal experiences, but I also think people see, feel, and witness things that cannot be explained.
Exactly right. Definitely. I agree with that. But I also think that the more you start looking into it, that's when things happen. So I try not to go too into it.
I have found in my life that if you seek, you will find. whether you're seeking good
Yes.
things or seeking bad things.
Exactly, definitely.
Okay. Amanda, it has been an absolute pleasure to meet you and speak with you. I
Thank
want to thank you
you.
so much for sharing this time with me.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so for everybody watching, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation between two native English speakers, albeit with a different native English. So, all right, everybody, if you want to do an interview with me like this, send me an email. I'll put my email down below. Y como siempre, muchísimas gracias por ver. Nos vemos pronto. All right. Thank you so much, man. It was really fun
Thank
to
you.
speak with you.
Yes,
So,
definitely. Just
anytime at all, if you need a collaboration or if you would like to
yeah.
work on anything, please let me know,
Yeah.
and I owe you one.
Yeah, I'll be in touch. I've just got a bunch of interviews that I have to get through, like podcast ones to edit and schedule. But yeah, I'll definitely be in touch with probably in the next month or so.
Wonderful. Okay, could you do me a favor whenever you get a chance? I won't put this video out for a little bit, but could you send me a nice picture of yourself for a thumbnail?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll send you like my links and stuff too.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you so
Cool.
much.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Have a good one.
You too.